So, so I'm Heather Conferton. I'm the Ecological Restoration Coordinator. Dams, invasive species, and the climate resiliency, the climate coalition are my focuses. In the future, you'll see me leading these. Unfortunately, I'm just sick at the moment. So we'll get to some of our updates with the climate resiliency piece of it a little bit later. We have a short presentation, but I'll go ahead and start with Roger to introduce yourself and then just pick someone else as you go along.
And if you also would like to just say a word or two about anything, any updates from you on what you may have been doing that relates to the topic of this group.
I'm sorry, was that to me, Allison?
It's to everybody. When you introduce yourself,
okay.
also just say, if there's something you're working on that relates.
Yeah, so my name's Roger Beatty. I am on the oars board, but mostly I'm an avid paddler. I'm out of my kayak on all three rivers as much as I can be. And I've seen the work of the beavers up real close, and I'm interested to learn more about them. So that's pretty much why I'm here. How about Tom?
I'm Tom SuAsCo. I'm from Wayland. I am the RSC rep from Wayland, have been since 1999. And I'm also a member of the Wayland Energy and Climate Committee. So I'm interested in climate issues from all sides of it. Recently, I've been trying to get the town as a town more interested in the issue of flooding on the river. I think I'm running into the classic issue of the urgent trumping the important in terms of getting actual action. But I'm very interested in hearing, about the beavers, but also about the status of the Talbot Mills Dam removal project. So I hope that gets touched on today. Let's see. Alyssa is the next one on my screen. Anyway.
Hi, I'm Alyssa from Concord, but I am the 2023 River Ambassador for the Wild and Scenic portion of the SuAsCo watershed. And I don't know what I just sort of dabbling in different activities. And because I'm really boots on the ground, I think, for the Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council, because I'm here and have time to go to these meetings and other meetings. Most of the activity in climate resiliency as it relates to the rivers at the moment relates to Warner's Pond and the dam removal there, I guess. But there are people on this call who are much more familiar with that than I am. Sam.
Hey, Alyssa. So I'm Sam. I am Westboro's new conservation assistant. So I started a few weeks ago, not quite sure what exactly we're up to, but happy to learn about what we're doing in Westboro. I know that beavers are on our minds. So also glad to still be in touch with everyone on the River Stewardship Council. Hi, it's been a minute. And I'll pick on Emma.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Emma Lord with the National Park Service, also with the SuAsCo Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council. Yeah, and kind of like Alyssa and Tom have mentioned, just interested in anything water, and Allison mentioned kind of the interconnectedness, particularly of rivers and river systems. So that's kind of why I'm here. Let's see, Mike.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Gender, and I'm the conservation manager at the town of Acton, and excited to be here today. And we're doing all kinds of cool stuff with climate resilience. Working on a dam removal project right now. Just removed a significant hazard dam in the town of Acton. We're doing some really cool, we'll have some plans for some cool beaver management type stuff, and things of that nature. And I will pass it on to Ian, who's my colleague here in Acton.
Hey everyone, my name is Ian Bergman. I just started back in July. I'm from Connecticut. I just graduated with my master's. So I guess I have a lot of the up-to-date information about climate change and the whole bleak outlook. Um, but I'm really excited here. And as Mike said, we're definitely working hard here. I'm finding my niche a lot with how we can build resilience in terms of biodiversity. But I'm from the coast, so I'm having fun learning all the freshwater and inland species. And I'll pick on Julia.
Hi, Julia Flannery. I'm from Maynard, and I am a conservation agent, assistant town planner, and GIS coordinator here. And yeah, I get to talk to you guys about some of the fun projects that we've been doing. So I will wait to go into that more later. Aaliyah, did you go yet?
I did not. I think I missed a little bit of the introduction too, so I'm sorry if I am not doing this correctly. But I am Aaliyah. I'm the Town of Shrewsbury Conservation Agent. I just started a year ago, so these are pretty new to me in general. Some fun updates for Shrewsbury, I guess, is we just signed our Conservation Commission bylaw for the town, which is really cool. And we're just seeing how it works out in the next couple months and the influx of applications we've been getting. So yeah, looking forward to that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pass it along to somebody. Oh God, let's pass it to the other Mike, Mr. Perrin.
Hi everyone. There's always two mics, so it's fitting that I got confused. So I just started 3 weeks ago with SVT. I am the new conservation associate, formerly Sam's position. So Sam, it's good to meet you. With that, I don't know much of what we're doing, but a large portion of my job will be making connections within the watershed to help in the name of land protection. So keying in on priority areas for climate resiliency as well as other factors. So I'm excited to be here and excited to meet you all. And I'm also eating lunch, so lunch between meetings, so apologies for that.
I think Pam is the last person. Have you gone yet?
Okay, hi, I'm Pam Helnick. I'm the conservation agent and the assistant planning director for the town of Hudson. And Hudson's big news and similar to, I guess, Shrewsbury is that last week at town meeting, we passed finally, third time we had to try to go to town meeting with our wetlands protection bylaw. And it passed by a good margin. So we're very excited to finally have that tool. And I am going to have to drop off a bit before 3 o'clock to get to another meeting. So I just didn't want anybody to, I'm hoping to certainly hear the whole Beaver presentation is my hope before I have to leave. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Pam. And yeah, that's super exciting. It's wonderful to hear that you folks have made progress on these wetlands bylaws. I know it's been a lot of years of work. Wow. It's but incredibly important, especially as we've seen at the federal level some of the erosions to wetlands protection. To know that we have a strong system in our state and in our local governments is really it's even more important. I did want to mention, I'd forgotten to say about when we formed this coalition, one of the things that we really have tried to keep a focus on, but it's actually got to be one of the hardest things, is figuring out who are the really most vulnerable communities and working with them and reaching out to them. We did quite a bit of work in our first year on sort of thinking about how, and some tools to sort of how to reach into communities to find those people, the people who are usually not at our meetings. And honestly, it's just like, it's an ongoing challenge, and just hand it off to all of you also as a challenge to keep thinking about who are those people who may not be keyed into the system, who may be in more vulnerable locations, who may not have the resources to protect themselves from various really dangerous climate impacts. So I think we just all want to really try to keep that in mind and not just talk about it, but see where we can concretely address it. So I think, but let's move forward with Julia's
Hey,
presentation.
Allison, I think we didn't introduce Becca because.
Yeah.
Oh, is Becca? Oh, Becca, I'm so sorry. No, that's Sam. Wait, where did Becca go? Oh, there she is. Sorry, she's been jumping around my screen.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my camera seems to not be working, but I'm Becca Solomon. I'm the conservation agent in the town of Ashland, and we have lots of beaver problems, so I'm excited to hear about the mitigation for the beavers and about anything with the dams that are later on the agenda.
Great, thank you. My apologies for not recognize you earlier. Okay, well, let's just proceed then. Julia, I think you can share your screen.
Great. So I want to share my whole screen because I am going to be jumping between, tried to like make a map, but it's actually a lot easier for me just to like use Mass Mapper because there's a few different places I want to look with you guys. So I'm actually going to start there. So as we have said, so my name is Julia Flannery. I'm the conservation agent in the town of Maynard. And I'm here to talk about some of our more experimental things that we are doing to combat the beaver problems that we have. Like many conservation agents, I love to hate beavers. They are the engineers of the forest. They're amazing animals. They are important ecologically, but they also wreak havoc and make it really difficult for us to do our job. So the area that I'm going to start off with is, and as you can see, it's not very pretty, but is our DPW yard. This is what kind of started this whole project. So as you can see here, I'm just going to kind of zoom out for a second so we can get our bearings of where we are. So here's the Assabet River. Here's our downtown area, which is our mill that most people know Maynard for. Over here is our market basket, which also is our main attraction to Maynard now. And so down near the Assabet River is a little area, and this water body is called Thanksgiving Pond. Fun fact, the reason why it's called Thanksgiving Pond is because it usually froze by Thanksgiving and everyone would go ice skating on it. So next to Thanksgiving Pond is our DPW yard. And as you can see, kind of hard to tell from this picture, but very close to a water body. We have a lot going on, and the biggest issue that we had was right here is our salt shed, and the difference in topography between this salt shed and this little area of water, it's actually lower elevation. So when we get flooding at the DPW yard, I have many concerns, but one of them is the salt. It's expensive for the town, bad for the environment, all of those things. So my first year, so I've worked here for 2 years, and I started, so 2 years, 3 winters ago. We were in the midst of having salt be removed, trying to just keep the area clean. And they were like, I got a call one day and they were like, the yard's flooding, but it hadn't rained. It was cold out. It really didn't make sense. So we go out there, and here's our rail trail. And as you can see, there's like a small bridge right here, and it had blocked up, and the water was overflowing into the DPW yard. And we were pumping it out. It was like kind of a panic, all hands on deck. We were able to get an emergency permit to take the dam, the beaver dam down to drain the area, and try to mitigate as much damage as possible. It really kind of destroyed this area. And you can see even in this ortho, the areas that are mostly get flooded. So with that being said, on this ortho, you can kind of see this like darker area right here. That's a beaver den. These beavers have lived here for quite some time. They have been, or I should say, beavers have lived here for quite some time, not necessarily these ones. And what has happened is that through the mitigation of the beavers, it's been this kind of wait until there's an emergency, get rid of the dam, trap the beaver, and then move on and wait till the next time we get a flood. And what we've learned is that they were taking down the dam, they were trapping the beavers, they weren't taking down the den. So now you have this beautiful den that's made. So, lazy beavers come in and are like, great, we can just take over this area. Everything's are done for us. So they were confused on why, they kept having these issues. So this is the area that I'll be talking about today and that we're focused on. And right now, just to give you like status update of this one particular area, either we have the smartest beavers in the world or someone is messing with our traps. And so that's why the public outreach is so important. We, can't prove that someone's messing with our traps, but our beaver people are like, something's fishy, something's up. So the area that we're going to be discussing and that I've done this is kind of experimental beaver mitigation is all along this area right here. This is called our Ice House Landing, and this is all conservation land. And so, yeah, let me get to my presentation. So, this all kind of started with a senior project with one of my students. So I take on a few seniors every year from the town of Maynard's High School. And I had one kid and he was super interested in animals. He was super interested in everything. And he didn't know kind of where to start or what the project was. And I was like, I read about this crazy idea that you could paint trees with a sand paint mixture to try to deter beavers from destroying our riverbank. In this area alone, it's very heavily wooded riverbank with a lot of biodiversity. And so, as we all know, shade is extremely important to the riverbank area. And what was also happening is it's a shallow area. You can kind of see in the background of this picture on your right, the little buoys, that's the Ben Smith Dam. So the area gets filled with sediment, it's shallow. When these trees fall, they can be a hazard. And so, and then we lose shade. And there's many issues and why we don't want to lose them. And so what we were trying to figure out is like, how do we want the beavers? We just don't want them to be building a dam in this one place. And how do we kind of push them to areas that we would rather see them? So the student was like, sure. His name's Wolf Allen. And he was like, let's try painting some trees. So it turned into like kind of a volunteer project to a full senior project. So he did a ton of research for me. And, was able to, everything he found, we've actually realized that since his project, there's been more and more people who are publishing data about this. So how's it done? We take a quart of latex paint and slowly mix in 2 cups of sand. You want to avoid putting all of the sand in at once or else it just becomes a hard mess, which we learned the hard way. And we chose brown as the color just because it blends, but it also kind of stands out a little bit. So you can see where these trees are being marked. You can see the flags on them because what we did was we went around first and flagged the trees that I wanted to protect, that either gave the most shade, were next to a tree that had already been chewed upon, or or just a species that we were curious if they would come after. So every beaver family likes different tastes. So beavers usually don't go for conifers, but beavers in Maynard do. They mostly like birch, but in this area, they hadn't touched the birch trees. So you really have to, that's why I say it's very experimental, kind of just guessed my way through a lot of this. But, we tried our best to pick about 15 trees to paint. And we went up 2 to 3 feet because that's about when a beaver stands up on his or hers feet and tries to grab. We want to make sure that that's the area. And how it works is that when they bite into or when they lick or whatever, their mouths touch the sand paint mixture, they don't like the way it feels. It doesn't feel like bark, and it basically tricks their mind into thinking, I think this is a rock. This is bad. I shouldn't eat this. I shouldn't take this down. So, some beavers aren't annoyed by this at all. And so you can see here's more pictures of our students painting. And yes, so far, it's been pretty successful, I'd say. I mean, we haven't seen a ton of activity. You'll see some of these temporary signs that I've put up saying active project area. It's a really easy, low-cost project, and I see more, like, is the mitigation for beavers a lot? Maybe, maybe not. But the amount of public outreach I was able to do through this project to say, hey, do you know about beavers? Do you know why you're flooding? Like, here's all of these things that you can learn about how important our ecosystem, like our riverbank is, and kind of the pros and cons of not trying to make anyone a beaver enemy, but they're really complex species that are hard to work with within a populated area like Maynard. And so we just started a new area in town, actually on the border of Acton, where Acton has had a lot of beaver or a lot of flooding due to beavers that are in Maynard. And so that's near 27 and our water treatment plant on Rockland Avenue. We have kind of left those beavers alone for a while. But we do have high activity. So I did have students 2 weeks ago go and paint some trees. We're just going to kind of use that as an experiment to see, maybe because we have more activity there, if this is working. And yeah, if these beavers are different from the ones over on Ice House Landing. So try to keep my presentation super brief because I want to have discussion. So yeah, let's start with questions and then we can kind of discuss however you guys want.
Great. Thank you, Julia. It looks super easy. I'm sure it's not quite as easy as it looks, but
no, it's as easy as it looks.
Great. Good news. I see Roger has his hand raised.
Yeah, just real quick, you mentioned trapping the beavers. What do you do with the beavers after you trap them?
So we don't trap the beavers. Obviously, we don't have the licensing to do that here. Beaver Solutions is the one who traps them. And it will really depend on the season. Most of the time trapping does mean euthanizing, but depending on the season and depending on the beavers themselves and their activities, sometimes the trappers are able to do relocation. Beavers are one of those animals that are extremely hard to relocate because they get lethargic and end up you end up almost torturing them more when you relocate and they can't find their way back.
Thank you.
Lisa?
What's up?
I was wondering if your commission had any thoughts on permitting. Do they require any permits for this? Do you think it's appropriate at all?
So we had a discussion with them through this. Like I had the student come, that was kind of a part of his project too, of public outreach. He made a presentation, because we weren't taking down trees, we weren't doing anything. We got the Conservation Commission's permission to be on the property because it's owned by the Conservation Commission. But, because we were able to prove that this paint has no, effect on the trees that we know of based on other people's previous experience, they didn't think that a full like RDA process was necessary. But I know that other commissions have different like land usage permits, so we just don't have that locally, but we did definitely discuss this and they were very aware and involved. Tom?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I haven't heard of this approach before. Has this been used for a while elsewhere in the country? What's the background to this?
Yeah, so The reason I started looking at it is because when I was in consulting, I worked in the North Shore and I worked in Manchester by the Sea, where beavers were a massive issue. Beavers in the North Shore are like way more terrorizing, I think, than the beavers we have here. They were pretty aggressive. And what their solution was to do the metal fences. But the problem with that was then I saw a significant amount of trees being harmed and actually falling over and causing a lot of damage because they weren't going back and expanding the fences. So the fences were being like taken over by the tree and then killing it eventually by allowing disease to get in or bugs or all of those things. And so when I came here and was looking for like options for mitigation, I really didn't want to do fences because unless you're on top of it and can expand and check on them, I just didn't have the time to do that. So I started Googling like other means of mitigation. And I actually found the article that started this was from the Lewis and Clark Conservation District in Helena, Montana, who was that's the first one I found that published on their website like, here's you should do like 2 cups of sand to 1 quart of latex paint, and like we've seen some progress with this, and then through looking that up I was able to find that a few towns in New Hampshire have done this, some in Vermont. So it's definitely still very experimental. Like there's not hard data to say that this is working. But yeah, I kind of stumbled upon it, and I think it's definitely a coming trend that until proven that it's bad, it's an option that's non-lethal.
So when was that Montana article published? How old is this approach?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not sure how long they've been looking at that.
If you have that reference, maybe I don't know if you have a link to it or anything.
Yeah, I can send it after this. I can send you guys what I Mike.
Julia, thanks a lot for sharing this information. It's really interesting and cool. I was just wondering if you have a plan for reporting on this, just because I'd be really interested to find out what you get for results, whatever it is, a year or 2 years from now, and just kind of see this out and find out, is it something that you find to be viable?
Yeah, and that's where like we've seen less activity in the area, meaning that we haven't seen that dam be built back up but is correlation and causation, are they not going over there because they're not taking the trees down that they would have been, or have the beavers just gotten so sick and tired of us being in their way that they've moved on themselves? So I haven't like published anything on this. This is actually like my first kind of public outreach, just because I was telling Heather and Allison about this crazy idea I had about painting trees. And they were like, that's actually really interesting. So yeah, I hope to kind of develop some sort of like track or recording mechanism at this point, just because of how spread thin I am, and probably all of you are. I am relying on like Boy Scouts and high school students to go out and observe. So we all get those kids who like show up and they're like, I need a project and I need it right now and I don't know what to do. And so what I do with them is I'm like, okay, here are 4 locations. Go find me where you see beaver activity. Basically like go on a walk, and here's some, pink tape, and tape up those trees that you see activity on. And then I use the next group of volunteers to say, hey, go back to those pink trees and tell me if it's worse than these images that we have from last year. So it's definitely not, I can do better at like making some sort of tracking mechanism. I'm just like, don't have the time to do that. But ideally, yeah, that's where we're working towards. Anyone else have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a curiosity than a question.
Yeah.
I know that you said that your public outreach really benefited from this project. Would you say that it's been well received by the public? Are they, for it, against it, or just very anti-beaver because of nuisance reasons?
So one thing that was very controversial, I would say, in the town was I was putting up signs and publishing this stuff. And every time I take a lot of students over there and a lot of public to this one area, just because it's not every day that you get to like be like, here's a beaver dam, and like literally stand on top of it and look at it. And it's just like an amazing feat of natural engineering. But because of the someone messing with our traps, the DPW is very concerned about talking about where these dams are, and trapping is a controversial topic, and people have a lot of feelings about it. But I think that I was like, instead of not doing anything, though, instead of keeping this a secret just for the few that might have a problem with it, what if we try to change their mindset of saying, we want beavers, we just want them in certain areas, and that it's still kind of something that the DPW director and I discuss at length, when to get the public involved. I think that the benefits outweigh any negativity that we get, any pushback. I think that making sure that people understand that we have to, yes, ideally we would all move away from the river and we'd let them do their thing, and it would be fine. But for a long time, beavers were endangered and we didn't have the problems that we do now. They are technically still endangered, but the population is quite large, and they are flooding areas, so we're losing forests because they're flooding them. And so you have to look at it and say, okay, we're getting a wetland, we're losing a forest. We need to start managing this in a more active way. And if that means trapping some beavers, we're not harming the population as a whole. And this is why we're doing it, for these environmental reasons. And, I think that, yeah, the benefits just outweigh kind of any negativity that we get towards the project.
Yeah, on that point, I was thinking like, well, which trees would we want to save? And thinking about, well, are we just pushing beavers around like from one place to the next, or how would we prioritize? If we prioritize the sort of large, beautiful floodplain trees, but then what if all of the younger growth gets eaten up? And so then there's no next generation of trees. I mean, there's some really interesting questions there of how do you decide,
And that's where it really depends on your beavers. So something that I've been trying to figure out, like I said, what do your beavers want to eat? We want to make sure that they have food. We want to make sure that we're not painting every single tree. But what we did was we looked at trees and said, I had the students kind of ask a few questions. So one of them was, is the tree larger than 6 inches? Because what we noticed as we went around the riverbank was that it wasn't until the tree was about 6 inches that the beavers started taking. So we were like, okay, we can let some growth happen. And then once they get to a certain diameter, that's when we'll paint them. Then are they going after larger trees, or can we leave those alone? Well, we found some markings on some very large, like 30-inch trees. And we were like, okay, we got some ambitious beavers here. So we were like, okay, between 6-inch and 30-inch. Well, that's like every single tree. So then we started trying to figure out what species are they going after and what species do we really want to protect. And so, we chose a few conifers just to see what would happen if they would try to still go after those, because we did see conifer activity. We focused mostly on birch and on maple, because those were the two that we saw the most activity in this area. Now, go down to the border of Acton, we have different trees down there and different activity. None of the conifers were touched. So different beavers do like different things. So I think, my suggestion, if you were to start this, and you have like manpower and activity, or need an activity for people to do, is start really observing, like, where do you have your populations? Where are they eating stuff and what are they eating? And beavers take trees down for two different reasons. Like they take them down to eat, but they also take them down to make dams and dens and all those things. So can you see the dam? Can you see the den? And can you try to figure out what species they're using for those? So what we were able to see from the dam was that they were using already broken pieces. Like nothing that they had put in their dam, they had chewed off because we didn't see any. So they were just like waiting, like lazy beavers, just like, okay, well, just take all these branches. So we were able to determine that all of the stuff that they were taking down, they must be eating because they're not using it for infrastructure. But I don't think that's always the case. And yeah, I'm trying to become a beaver expert just because I'm obsessed with the animal, but it's just so fascinating to me that like from one side of town to another, you have just a completely different, like there's no like, here's what they eat and here's how you prevent it. They just are minds of their own. Any other questions?
I actually have one.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out your beavers. How long of a reconnaissance period? I mean, how long did you take to do that? I actually think we constantly have high schoolers wanting a project to do, and I'm always wondering what we could do, but this sounds like a very interesting project just in the fact that it would engage them and also other volunteers, but just as an experimental point of view to see how well this would actually work.
So how long did I take in like evaluating the site? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So we did this because of the way that the senior project schedule works, not necessarily the way that it was useful. But so I got the student assigned to me in December, and then we took about a month. I had him go out and evaluate 3 different areas, and take note of where he like take a picture of where he's seeing these the markings like beaver activity. We went over kind of how to look for signs of beavers. And he did that for maybe 2 months, kind of evaluating certain areas and then going back and like, at first I said, oh, just go look at it. And I was like, actually, you should take measurements of diameters, species. And then that was a whole nother part of like, how do I identify a tree? And so then that turned into another month. So you can kind of, depending on your age range, and on how long you want the project to be, you can give them as much or as little as possible. You know, if you want to make it super autonomous, be like, go out and here's the things you're looking for, report back, and then move on to step 2 of now choose what species we want to paint. Now go and paint them. So you can kind of break it up in a couple different ways. Yeah, so I would say the whole project from like start to finish was 4 months. But that's just because of that back and forth and working with the student, getting him to, I mean, he had to write a paper, he had to do a lot of research. You know, there's a lot of different components there. So it doesn't need to be that long. Tom?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if this can be approached from the other side, if people who are interested in forest management would be interested in using, you know, kind of like you use predatory insects to go after, you know, manage the landscape. If this approach could be scaled enough to be actively used for forest management. Have you seen any indication that anybody's looking at that?
I mean, I know that especially in the north, like in the northwest of the country, they are avidly, you know, using beavers for forest management and moving them around. to dam up certain places where they want water and to remove them from where they don't want water. And I think that's done. I'm not sure if that's done through like wildlife, Department of Wildlife Services or MPS, or I don't know exactly who is doing that, but I know that is a lot of Western states do use beavers for use them as mitigation. I would say, what we're struggling with right now is trying to stop them from flooding people's homes. That's more of my priority at this point is homes, infrastructure, and roads. And then forest and wetland management being secondary, just because when you get a trapping license, when you apply for one, it's actually through your Department of Health. Fun fact. If it's not in trapping season, if it's in trapping season, you just go straight to the state. If it's not in trapping season, you have to go to get the health department to sign off on it. And that's because you have to prove a public health emergency. So they don't consider forest management or the fact that we're losing, 7 acres of forest to these beavers as a public health emergency. However, they do consider roads, infrastructure, and homes being something that needs to happen as soon as possible.
Well, I have a friend who was pretty high up in the regional forest management planning hierarchy. I'm going to mention this to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
Mike?
Thanks. That was a really interesting presentation. I'm curious as to why you went with this method as opposed from let's say beaver deceiver, one of those systems.
Yeah. My straightforward answer is money. I didn't have the funds. The secondary answer is, it's installing. I would love to install some beaver deceivers. I know that in Acton, you guys have a few on the rail trail, and they've been extremely useful. And I presented to our DPW this is what we need to do. We can have them keep the dam up and trick them, and then put these, they have the tubing so you can drain the water and all these things. And they were like, we can't afford to pay someone to do that, and our DPW workers are not trained enough in how to do that. They would just rather take a machine and rip out the dam. So kind of money and lack of enthusiasm. But I think that's where hopefully we start to see some more grant funding that would allow us to do some more work, because the beaver deceiver world is fascinating and becoming better and better every day. And, a lot of people are working really hard to get some more great technology and simple ideas in there to be able to handle the management of these animals. You just need enthusiasm and money. Ian?
I think Alyssa raised her hand first.
Oh, okay. Alyssa, sorry, I just looked up.
I was wondering if you noticed or there was anything in the literature about any adverse effects of painting the trees, like on bug population or birds going after the bugs.
So one thing we did do before I even started this was I went to our tree warden and was like, what are your thoughts? And he kind of took his basis of knowledge from painting trees like they do with trail markings. So you see and the reason why they do that is because they see that that's less harmful for the tree than putting a nail in and exposing it to disease or to insects. So he was basically like, stick with the trees that have bark, because the bark is made to grow off and eventually we're just putting that on the exterior face. If it's already been chewed or if you see bark coming off, do not paint it, because we really don't want get the paint permeated into the tree. But then it kind of brought this other thing up of well, could we use the paint to save those trees that we have the bark coming off because the beavers have started to eat it and then decided that they were against it. And I didn't find enough literature about that. Maybe someone has done some tree experiments, but yeah, we stuck with ones that already had bark, that we had no activity on. So any of the ones that already had activity, we left alone, and just went for the ones that the bark was like very much protecting the actual tree.
Ian.
So just to say a little bit of the beaver deceiver thing this year, one of the first things that I kind of got talked about when I started was beavers. And I'm not used to seeing beavers at all. I used to live like on the coast in Connecticut, and I guess they don't like salt. So I was like, oh, I'll build a beaver deceiver. That sounds like fun. Like I do have a slight fear of water, but whatever. But we ran into like, materials cost. It costs a lot of money. So we had the enthusiasm, like you said, but the cost was just not feasible. And we even brought some people in, and it costs more money to build a beaver deceiver than it does to trap them. So,
Exactly.
yeah, my only question was, and then I'm learning more and more. Did you have any people who were just upset that there was just paint on trees? They just said, it disturbed the natural view, it ruined their photography or something. That's the only thing I would see, like something that might come up.
Yeah, so I mean, where we did it was we went off so like Ice House Landing, there's a dock, and now we have a kayak rental, which it's a whole nother conversation for another day. But so we have a significant amount of activity down there. And it wasn't until I pointed out to people saying, hey, that's where we've painted, that I actually got, oh yeah, because we used brown. So it really blends, and especially in the summer, when you have foliage, like you cannot, it took me a minute to like be like, wait, which one is painted? The only ones that we really can see it on is the birch because they're white. So you can really tell the difference. But again, it's 2 to 3 feet up. It really doesn't affect the natural landscape. However, maybe if we had done it on the other side of the vista, like if it's a vista viewing area, I think that's something to definitely take into consideration. Versus where we were doing it, which was like on the side in an area that unless you're in a kayak, you're not going to realize that it's there. Cool. Isabel?
Hi everyone. How are you?
Hi.
Just wanted to share some of our experience with the beaver population, which we have quite extensive population here in Billerica between the Shawshene River and the Concord River. Is extensive floodplain. And so since the year 2000, the town's worked with, many of you may have heard of Mike Callahan through Beaver Solutions. He's amazing. I've learned so much with him. Initially, it was the the Board of Health Director, Rich Berube, that worked very closely with them in collaboration with our department. But then I started back in 2012 and became a lot more involved. We oversee the funding. We actually include funding in our annual budget. I have $15,000 that I budget, and sometimes we go over that. And you're right, beaver deceiver, culvert protective fences, or flexible pond leveler pipes. We use, and we have over 60 devices installed through, oh, actually we have about 45 of those installed, probably more 50. I know we installed a few more in high flood prone areas. Then we have no damming zone areas, which are critical and highly sensitive zones. Those are, we have the commuter rail that runs through the town. So anything impacting the commuter rail from a safety standpoint, and also flood prone areas, such as like there's a specific area in town to Gray Street off of Content Brook that there's a lot of houses that are in FEMA floodplain, and any slight fluctuation in resulting from beaver activity can really create significant damages to those homes. So those are areas where trapping does occur, and you're right, trapping results in euthanization because it is actually considered it's torturous for them to be relocated. So that's what the state requires. So, but I have to tell you, the program has been quite successful in Billerica, and I know Mike has referred to the program here in Billerica on some of his presentations across the state, and in other areas of the country. It allows for humans to kind of, or beavers to coexist with the humans, and and just maintain a diversity population and biodiversity when it comes to, wetland systems. And again, finding that balance. No one likes to see their backyard flood more than it may flood because of wetlands, right? We probably all received a number of phone calls after the summer's event. So we do deal with residents a lot on beaver management issues, and those beaver deceiver devices, they're expensive. They do require maintenance and monitoring, but they usually, when installed properly, they can last a long time, and many of them protect our roadway culverts, protect our roads from becoming flooded, and again, nearby areas. So where a beaver activity really won't or doesn't affect an essential, or a road, or a culvert, roadway culvert managed by the town, or public property, or neighborhoods directly adjacent to a major road, we've had to recommend that a neighborhood, or a street, or a group of residents, when it's specifically on private property, a dam, that they kind of get together and pay for that management. But I have to say the town's very proactive in working and helping folks out with that. But it's been part of our budget for years and years before I started here, and it's somewhat increased, but it's been pretty steady. But new areas, kind of pop up, and trapping works for a couple of years, but then they come back. And sometimes beaver deceivers, pond level of devices, cover protective devices, or don't work because a stream system is too shallow. So you do need to trap in certain high critical or highly sensitive zone areas. So you look at a series of criteria that we evaluate. But I have to say, usually we don't make recommendations on consultants. We maintain a list, but I can't stress enough about how much great work Mike Callahan does. He's awesome. He really is.
Yeah, I would reiterate that. Yeah, Beaver Solutions is the solution for everything. And they're able to, provide great recommendations on these individual systems. The last thing I just want to say is I can send out everyone this great 2-pager that I had my high school student write. So, as you read it, just remember a 17-year-old wrote it. But I was very proud of him and the outreach that he did. And I hope to continue working with you all. I think the biggest thing that we don't want to do is, I don't want to push all the beavers out of Maynard and then make them Acton's problem, or Stowe's. So I think having these conversations, working together in the watershed, is going to be really important for us. And the biggest thing is we need to coexist. And so I think that means that we need to get a little bit more creative. And yeah, trapping where it's necessary, but trying to find those non-lethal options that are low cost, that we can kind of experiment with. So yeah, I can send out some of this information. And by all means, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me, and I can kind of give you the exact parameters of paint and sand and all of those things that we're using. So yeah, thank you all for listening today.
Thank you. Really good.
Great. Thank you, Julia. And I'd encourage people to think about, if you're interested in teaming up with us or with each other, I love this. We do have this problem of like kids who need those special credits. And it's always like right at the wrong moment when you don't really need them. But this is perfectly suited as that kind of volunteer work, I think. And kudos for organizing them and making that happen. So and especially for us, we didn't talk much about it, but we've had a lot of problems of just trees falling into the rivers and streams so that you can't paddle safely, and and they obviously can cause flooding and that kind of thing. But there's some really big trees that have taken a long time to grow, and it's a shame to see them sort of all get mowed down.
Sorry, I just wanted to have one more thing before I forget. And it was like my most important note that I had on here that I hadn't said. Always remember that beavers are extremely aggressive animals, and they give you many warning signs before they start chasing you. I have been chased in a river in waders by a beaver because I was not paying attention to the warning signs. I thought it was just being cute. You learn real fast what those warning signs are. But I would just make sure that when you have volunteers, that they fully understand that this is a wild animal. They are adorable looking, but they will bite you. And, they can take down trees with their teeth, so they can fully take you out. You don't hear about beaver attacks very often, but they will come after you. They are a lot quicker than you think, especially in water. And one of the big things that they are kind of known for, at least when I was in consulting and taking water samples, is ripping holes in your waders and making it so you basically get stuck and your waders fill up with water. They're so smart. They stalk. They will be underwater watching you. You're being watched the whole time. Even if you don't see them, they see you. So those are types of things that as you start working with volunteers and getting them on the river, it's very important for them to know, like, warning signs, respect wildlife. Also the difference between an otter and a beaver. Otters' means and methods of warning signs of aggression are very different from a beaver. So some of the things just to remind everyone, I mean, especially with working with kids, very concerned about their safety, but I've had so many people be like, there's a beaver in my backyard, and I walked up to say hi, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. Do not do that. If you see them, walk away, stay clear. You can also, because they're endangered, it is considered harassment if you approach. So we want to stay legal. We want to stay safe. So that's my safety warning to you that I forgot to mention.
Thank you. That is a very, very useful bit of information. And thank you so much for this. So great. Heather, I think we're going to move on to talking about things that don't attack you, like rain gardens. So I am going to, should I start the show?
Yeah.
I share the screen. Okay, great. As you can tell, we're not in the same office today. Does that look right to you?
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So I'm going to try to get through this without coughing up a lung. So as we discussed earlier in the year, we had some money from DuPont, and I had asked for suggestions for the rain garden. That's what we decided to do, and it seemed that the senior center in Marlborough was one of the best places to do it because they actually have a garden club who they're willing to take care of it in perpetuity. It faces Ward Park, which I'll show you a few slides down. And so even putting in the rain garden, we had people stopping by asking questions about it. And then it was really close to DuPont so that the DuPont employees could come out and actually help us plan it. Next slide. These are the employees, and they worked hard. We actually got this in a lot quicker than I would have expected, but they were just very quick with getting this done, and it's going to be beautiful. You can't really tell right now, but come spring, it should be in full bloom. Next slide. this is just some of the photos. I can actually send you a link to our Flickr account. It actually has a whole album of photos. We had a wonderful photographer, Ed Feather, which I can send you his contact information. He was kind enough to donate his time and his skills to photographing the event. And he's a great guy. He's very, very nice, and it was very generous of him. Next slide. So one of the things about this, if you can see in this photo, the rain garden faces this Ward Park, and that you could probably just see the outline right there of the actual, yeah, this was beforehand. So the day of, we had so many people just stop by, ask questions, which is why I had the table out there and I was giving an explanation. And then this is just a little, I'm currently in the process of putting the sign together, designing the sign. I'm hoping to have it up by the end of December. I don't know if that'll actually happen, but that's my goal. And then come maybe April, May, I'm trying to put together a ribbon cutting at the senior center. They actually just elected a new mayor, so I'll be getting in touch with their office in the next few months, because it would be great to have the press out there and, you know, have an actual ribbon cutting. Next slide. And this is just a excuse me, just a photo of us on the day of. The volunteers were excellent, and we wind up getting most of our plants from, well, actually the bulk of our plants from the Native Plant Trust. And I can also send you out a listing of those. I was gonna try before this meeting to have a photo of all the plants on there, but hot and brain right now. Totally lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Anyway, oh yeah, sorry. Russell's Garden Center actually donated some flowers as well, so I want to give a shout out to them. They were very kind to donate some flowers. So if you have any projects that you need done, I would contact them. We'll try to just give them business. Next slide. So for our dams work, sorry, next slide. We've actually had, so actually I wanted to just have a discussion briefly with everyone about who might have attended the Dams 101 conference at Clark University, and then who might be a part of the Dam Busters webinar series. And then how useful do you think these resources are? What new things you might have learned? And like, what other resources could you use? And then, you know, updates on dams in your towns. We'll get to that in a minute though. Next slide. We've actually just had recently some opportunities to come up, and we're lending our support in the upper left corner. That's Warner's Pond. So I'm sure a lot of people know about that. And of course, we're the project managers for Wheeler Pond Dam, which is in the lower left corner, and Talbot Mills in the upper right corner. And then the lower right corner is Hager Pond. We actually have the Hot Brook Protection Association wanting to see results with this dam. It's been a problem for about 25 years. We're just in beginning discussions in it, and this is actually a complicated ownership issue at the moment, but hopefully we'll have some resolution with that in the coming months. Next slide. And actually this photo on here is Erickson's grain mill. It's Erickson's dam, and we toured with Ian and Mike's predecessor, Bettina Abe, and she said it cost them a lot to maintain this, and they may actually be open to having this dam come down. So I'm hoping that in the future we can actually have that discussion with them. So that's part of our potential opportunities for removal. Next slide. And then just so people know, if you can see this, we're prioritizing our dams right now. So we're trying to ID all of them. And a lot of this is through Mass Mapper, which is one of the resources I love the most. There's several resources that I'm using. And so we're prioritizing them based on, a set of ecological factors and dam conditions. So like just for example, Hager Pond is and if I remember correctly, it's an unsafe condition and it's a significant hazard. So that's usually when the Office of Dam Safety gets involved. It either has to be a high hazard or significant hazard, and it has to be either a poor unsafe condition. So this list that we're actually working on, we will be releasing it in the next few months. But just for your knowledge, there are about 166 dams that we know of in the SuAsCo, 17 are main stem dams, and then of course there's none in the wild and scenic segment. And that's just my short little slideshow.
Great, thank you, Heather. Did you want to go back to that discussion a bit at this point? And I'm also happy to give any updates if people have any particular questions on any of the particular dams that we mentioned.
So why don't we do that first? We'll go ahead and give the update on Talbot and Wheeler.
Oh, okay. Let me go back to that. This was just a handy picture. So upper right is the Talbot Mills Dam in North Billerica, and that project is the most advanced. It is in the middle of being permitted. Well, it's in the early stages of the permitting process. It's halfway through the MEPA environmental review process, and we've almost got the 75% design plans ready. Those need to be ready for the permitting process so that it can be clear how what's going to happen and what the how the construction process, so-called construction, it's really more like deconstruction, would be approached, all of those details. So we're in the middle of that, and also of talking with the property owners who would be affected by the construction or have a role in that process. Maybe I'll answer questions at the end. I'll just go quickly whip through these. And then lower left is in Berlin. The Wheeler Pond Dam is a very long, low dam that is in poor condition and threatens it. It's a significant hazard dam, I believe, and it threatens infrastructure right downstream. There's some roads, and actually the pond behind is mostly filled in with wetlands. And the owner is very interested in removing the dam to remove the hazard, and then also protecting the land as conservation land once the dam is out. And on the right is Hager Pond Dam. This Hager Pond feeds into Hop Brook, and it's right near the town line between the city of Marlborough and Sudbury. And it is in poor condition, and it's I believe a significant hazard, and it's but the ownership is somewhat in dispute, and so that's one reason that nothing has happened to date, although it's clearly something needs to be done, and quite soon. So we are collaborating with others on that one, just to see what is the best strategy for this dam. And then upper left corner is a very summary green picture of one of the two spillways on Warner's Pond Dam in West Concord. And that dam, the town of Concord is considering removing it, and has convened is in the process of convening a task force with various stakeholders, and particularly various town bodies that would be involved, recreation, conservation, etc., to have pretty much a year-long process to really fully understand all the pros, cons, implications, hear everybody's points of view, and then take that to town meeting in 2025. So those are just a few. I mean, there's also some places where there is a dam that the fish just need to get in for spawning. So there may be some, for example, Lake Cochituate, that dam is not going to be removed, but it would be great if the fish could get over it, get into spawning areas. So there's that also, not just the removal, but the access question on some of them. Tom, did you have a question about any of these or others?
Yeah, on Talbot Mills, Bill Ricco weighed in as a town via the town manager at the very end of the, and I don't have the process steps down, but the last step of the MIPA process. I'm wondering if you think that is a serious issue, or if this is going to happen, it's on track. You know, where are we at in terms of the certainty of this happening?
Well, I would say we're very much on track. All the issues that have been raised are issues that can be addressed. And so then it's a matter, particularly on the historic question, because as you can see at this site, there's a lot going on there and many layers of history. There's, you know, original inhabitants, there's the industrial history, there's the Middlesex Canal, there's lots going on at this site. And so that is a very thorough process under Section 106 review, where the interested parties are brought together and to work out what would be appropriate mitigation to whatever damage, historic damage, might be caused. And so this is it's a very thorough and very open process, and we fully expect that that will be a successful process. And the funding is in hand for the actual construction, and so it's a matter. Yeah,
I'm wondering if it would be useful or important to have the town of Wayland weigh in as a town. As you know, I made comments myself, but no other town has weighed in, I think, other than Billerica. And
the town of Sudbury did, as I recall. So the MIPA
Concom from Sudbury, I believe.
Yeah. So the MIPA process, we're actually halfway through, and it's a discovery process. Basically, it's looking at what are all the environmental impacts understood, and so we will be submitting a environmental impact report soon, and there will be again a comment period, and again the possibility to write comments, to send in comments. But they would need to address whatever remaining issues there may be. So something that's already be addressed, I'm not sure how much it adds to address it again. But, you know, we could look into that more to see if there's a, you know, important aspect for an upstream community like Wayland.
Well, you know what my comments said. So the town would just repeat those, but as the town of Wayland. So
okay.
You know, I'm wondering if that would be useful.
Okay, well, we can look into that. Okay. Roger?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I've never asked this before, but I assume the dam is coming out. Once it's out, what do we know about boat passability? Will kayaks, canoes be able to go through those rapids, or what do we know?
What we know is, what you can see there is that it's actually a natural waterfall there. It's very rocky. It's also quite a, between here going upstream up to Pollard Street, which is a little it's under a mile, has quite a steep incline. And so it will be, it will not be still water. It would actually be probably quite fun. And certainly some bits would be white water, like right here in the picture at the dam, at the waterfall. So it would actually have quite a different character from some of the rest of the Concord River, which is seen as an advantage. It wouldn't be for everyone. You know, it would be pretty exciting, and you'd want to have some skill probably to navigate it, but it would be a super recreational resource for those who enjoy that kind of activity.
The Fordway, that section you just mentioned up to Pollard Street, is already very rocky and runs pretty swiftly through there. I just wondered if this would be more so than that, more dangerous than that. It's probably
We
impossible.
don't really know exactly because we
Yeah.
haven't seen exactly where everything is, but it would probably have a similar characteristic. Although this particular waterfall here was probably the largest, which is probably why they built the dam there in the first place. So that might be more exciting than other spots.
Okay.
We don't know exactly.
Okay.
That's
Good. Thank you.
part of the excitement is to you know, it will be a new resource that's uncovered.
Yeah.
Julia.
Hi.
Hey.
So in Maynard, we have 6 dams. 2 of them are considered significant hazards. Ben Smith Dam is our biggest one, our biggest problem. And it's private, they're all private land. And so, you know, this conversation comes up a lot. People ask me, like, there's this trend on dam removal, and like, what are you doing about it? And I am really concerned about, you know, overstepping into like it's private property. It also, that dam makes the mill pond, which is then another water body. And so if that dam is removed, we would lose our mill pond. And then we have a building, and there's all these questions I have, but no one, it seems like, has approached it just because of that private entity aspect. And so I'm just wondering if you guys have run into that, and like, how do you start that conversation without like making the owners upset or like starting a brawl in town?
Yeah, we don't want brawls. You know, one thing, it's a great question, right? And first of all, it takes a willing dam owner, right? There's no question. It's up to the dam owner, basically, whether they want to remove their dam or not. And in the cases I've shown here for Talbot and Wheeler, these are both dam owners who did not want their dam anymore. And the lucky thing for them, because it's actually it's not only expensive to own a dam, it's expensive to take it out. And so the good thing is that there is funding available these days for that. So it can be a sort of a lifesaver, actually, for people who don't want the dam. This is a great moment. And that's why we would really encourage folks to like attend that lunchtime seminar, the Dam Busters one that Charles River and others are doing, DER, because it's just a great source of information. But it's complicated, and we know people care deeply about their scenery, their neighborhood, the place they live, their home, right? And it's like at least 10 years ago, we actually did a study was done of the Assabet River dams, including the Ben Smith. We have a whole big fat report on that from the Army Corps of Engineers, which you're probably familiar with. And we did a whole process of holding discussions and conversations and seminars all up and down the river about this in the context of river restoration. And for the Ben Smith in particular, it would take a lot more study to even figure out how to approach it, because there's a lot of contaminated sediment. There's a lot of recreational use, but there's also really poor water quality at times. So I think it would be a great conversation to start, and to not start it in an intimidating way, because I think the point is that it's something where you have to listen to everybody, and you can find a lot of solutions to a lot of the issues that people are concerned about. Some people think it'll create more flooding. Some people think it'll create less. I mean, there's lots of lack of information and a lot of sort of creative thinking that's needed to find a solution that works for everyone, or at least mostly works for most people. So that's where we'd be happy to have more conversations. We're very interested in that. And Heather showed that map of, we haven't finished our prioritization, but we're going to put together an action plan, which is really just a starting point. Like, oh, okay, who owns this dam? Well, is it a problem? What are the pros? What are the cons? Let's have a conversation with the owner. So it's all about starting that conversation. But no one's,
Great.
no one's coming in with like, you have to do this, you know, that's not
yeah,
happening.
I would love to continue this and get your feedback on how to approach this with the owners, because you know they're a large company that own thousands of buildings, and they're located in DC, and you know they answer the email when I say, hey, a mattress is stuck on the dam and you need to remove it. But that's about where that communication ends. And so I think yeah, if we can talk about, you know, how do we approach them and start this conversation again, just because the ownership has turned around so much in the past 10 years. That would be great. Thank you.
Great, good. We would look forward to that. Roger, did you still have your hand up, or it's a new hand? Old hand. Okay.
No, I forgot to drop it. I apologize.
Okay. Great.
Part of the-
Other people, I don't see any, but I have like a minuscule screen right here. Okay. Well, that I don't know. Let's go back to sorry, wrong way. If there are any other questions about, we would be curious to know if anybody went to either of these. There's a wonderful conference in excuse me, in Worcester at Clark University. And then this monthly series, I think we just lunchtime, you know, webinar, really encourage people just to tune in to learn. I think we sent out all that information in our last email, but we're also happy to resend. Is
So
that
with
okay? You know, go ahead.
I don't know if anyone's attended those, but I think they're very useful. And then I'm also attending one for Nashua River next week. They're actually having one for their dam owners. So I think as we progress along in this, especially as I learn, because this is a whole new realm of work for me, as I learn more about them, I actually have a volunteer, and we're going to start. We had started doing some field trips to the dams, but we're going to start doing more of those so that we can get to know the dams. We also just had conversations with people, you know, around the dams just to see if they'd be in favor of it. I would like to do what Nashua River is doing, and they're actually targeting dam owners. So as soon as we have our prioritization list together, I'd like to put something like that together as well. And at some point, and this is a future goal, I'd also like to do a story map of all the dams. I don't know if we'll focus on main stem. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that's just a future thought. I also have a student at UMass Lowell who's interested in helping me out. So there could be some resources that we put together for dam owners. But as we go along in this, it's really great and important to have these conversations. And the more that you guys reach out to me, we can start having these conversations, because I feel like a lot of us are learning as we go. So if you know of people, let me know. And then if you want to set something up, we can absolutely talk to those dam owners. But all this is in progress, and it's great. It's great to learn about all these resources. Alyssa?
I did attend the conference in Clark, and actually was delighted to find an entire table full of other Concord folks who were there. And I think as we got together, we learned an awful lot about the other experiences people had, and you sort of, it's the public outreach effort and how to address that in a better way than the town had been doing in the past. And I think what we found particularly useful was the role playing that was mentored by, I forget the woman's name, where we were each given a role about, you know, a particular dam and different alternatives of how to address that problems with water quality and invasive species. And it was really helpful about in terms of how to listen to people, how to give feedback, and how to get to a compromise. And at least in my group, we were able to come to a compromise situation much more easily than we expected when we actually listened to each other and talked about, you know, what was most important to us. So that was incredibly helpful to us, and I think the town has opened up their discussions to a wider group because of that, and probably formed their task force around the knowledge that was obtained from some of that.
Great. And Becca, I see your hand is up.
So I actually wasn't able to attend the last Dam Busters one, though I'm hoping to attend the next one. But our town engineer, I believe, had signed up for that. And while he couldn't be here today, he wanted to, he couldn't. He had relayed to me that it was very educational and useful for him as well from the DPW side of things. I don't have much more details than that, but I figured I'd share it along as long as we were discussing it.
Great, thank you. And also just want to mention that, you know, towns, any of these projects have to go through the local conservation commission. So there's, as well as, you know, if there's historical review, historical commissions and whatnot. So there's a lot of opportunity to ask questions, to get details. And so, you know, and I think everyone opts to have more information available and be more transparent even than necessary, just because you know, people deserve that and it's worth it. So it is it's not a short process because you know, there's a lot to go through. So anyway, I don't see any other hands. Oh, is there, Ilya?
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to say that I also got to attend the conference and it was just so informative.
Good. Yeah, so encourage everyone, whether or not you want to remove a dam, you know, I think it's because there are so many of them. They could be hiding in your woods. Honestly, they're all over the place. Then you never know what you might find, and it could be useful. So thank you, everybody. I think we're a little over time. I want to wrap up, and our next coalition meeting is probably going to be in the spring. And we're thinking maybe, oh, wouldn't it be great to be in person? But just keep that in the back of your minds. If we can pull it off, wouldn't that be nice? I don't know, we could even do a field trip or something. That'd be even better. Yeah, I see nodding heads. Okay, cool. Anything else, Heather?
Just thank you for coming, and thanks for putting up with my flu-like symptoms. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to reach out, to email me, or if there's any other resources that you'd like to pass on. I keep inviting more and more municipalities and towns and organizations to this coalition. So the more that you can help me spread the word, the better. And I really would like to do more things like the rain garden in the future. So if you think of any of those kinds of, you know, types of projects, more importantly, the funding that goes with it, that would be excellent if you could let me know. Thanks, everyone. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Stay in touch.